Most guitarists try to fix their comping by learning more chord voicings, but when I transcribed Jim Hall's comping on Alone Together with Paul Desmond, the biggest lesson was almost the opposite. Jim Hall sounds free because he has control of rhythm, of space, of the essential notes inside the chord, and control of small variations. So before we learn a single new chord shape, listen to this. If you want to capture the essence of swing, you have to focus on rhythm first. Listen to just how swinging Jim is in this example. The main driver behind this is the rhythm, and this is great advice beyond just comping or even jazz. If you break music down into its building blocks, rhythm, melody, and harmony, rhythm is the most fundamental, because melody and harmony can't exist without it. Let me prove this to you. This is an example of the correct chords but with bad rhythm and time feel. And this is an example of the wrong chords but played with better rhythm and time feel. This is why comping is such a blind spot for guitarists. We often practice soloing like a language but practice comping like a list of chord shapes. Jim Hall shows the opposite. Great comping is improvised language too, and rhythm is the first thing that makes that language speak. So how do you get better at this? Well, it's the same way you get better at jazz in general, listening and imitating. Let's listen to this 4-bar comping section deeply. Now we limit the variables and focus only on the rhythm. Try to recreate it with your voice, pretending to be a snare drum. But this may be the biggest learning point of the lesson. Jazz is a rhythm and feel-based language first. Start internalizing this and your playing will improve exponentially. But adding more and more rhythmic words to your vocabulary doesn't automatically mean that you understand the language. You also need to know when to use that language appropriately. And what Jim shows us in the first chorus of Paul Desmond's solo proves exactly that. Did you hear that? For the entire first chorus of Paul Desmond's solo, Jim completely lays out zero comping, but the music still sounds killing. When jazz is played at its best, the harmony is implied through the melody. Check this out. I'll improvise on the A section of a popular tune, and you tell me if you know which song it is. Purely through the melody, you should be able to hear the tune, There Will Never Be Another You. And this already puts you into the correct mindset for comping. Listen first. Jim shows this restraint by laying out for a full chorus, and while you don't have to do that every time, it shows us two things. 1, jazz doesn't need you to play chords in order to sound good. And 2, listening first allows you to comp responses inside the conversation of the ensemble rather than dictating your comping first and forcing the ensemble to respond to you. That role is generally reserved for the soloist. The full comping transcription is linked in the show notes, and I encourage you to work on sections of it and internalize them. There are enough rhythmic variations inside just this transcription to help you move from a spacious, listening-first approach all the way to more dense, statement-driven comping. So the point is not to lay out forever, the point is to make better decisions in the moment. We've come all this way and we still haven't spoken once about chord voicings, and that's for a very good reason. Rhythm is the foundation, and the listen-first approach puts us into the correct mindset to fulfill our role. But Jim isn't finished showing us that less is more. Look at his chord voicings here. The 2 dominant chords are implied through only 2 notes, the 3rd and the 7th, the guide tones. These are the most descriptive notes of any chord, and on dominant chords they form the tritone. If you want to check out a video that reveals the tritone as the engine of functional harmony, I'll link it here. This reductionist approach allows Jim to follow the skeleton of the harmony while leaving space for the rest of the ensemble to speak. Let me show you this in action. I'll comp behind the solo that I played earlier, focusing on listening first and responding with good rhythms and reduced voicings. Now, this is where I think a lot of teachers get this slightly wrong. The outcome is a feeling of simplicity, nothing is overstated, and the harmony is mostly reduced. But just because something sounds simple doesn't mean that it's easy to perform or practice. Let me break it down. Guitarists usually learn chords like this. You see a chord symbol in a chart, say C minor 7. You identify the C on your low string and then insert the memorized shape for the quality, minor 7. When you're starting out, that's a fine strategy, but if that's the only information you're going on, you don't really understand what you're playing. It's more cut and paste rather than intentional selection. If you want to execute your comping with a similar level of control and freedom as Jim Hall, you have to go a few levels deeper. That's where the word from the beginning of the video becomes important: control. You need to know the intervals on each string by position, name, and sound. Here is a C root note. Na, that's the flat 7. Na, that's the flat 3rd. Na, and that is the 5th. Now we've strengthened our understanding of the chord voicing by breaking it down into its components and filtering it through 3 lenses at the same time. Theory, naming each interval. Sound, singing and hearing each interval. Instrument application, plotting those notes on the fretboard. I think of this as the BET triangle: brain, ear, touch. Each of these represent the same music, just from a different lens. And it should be the goal of a jazz musician to balance these lenses, grow the capacity of the triangle, and practice the material so much that you can eventually execute it on instinct. Now that your understanding of the chord is stronger, it becomes easier to reduce the voicing into smaller parts. This becomes a true reduction, because if you had no real understanding of the intervals, then going from this voicing, drop 3, to this voicing, guide tones, to this voicing, 5th and 3rd, is not really a reduction, it's actually an addition of new voicings that you have to memorize. So spend more time breaking music down in your practice sessions. That's what allows you to truly simplify in performance. From here, it becomes much easier to create small variations as the chords fly past. That opens us up to Jim's next concept. Variation is closer than you think. In my early days of unlocking the fretboard and trying to master jazz, I was constantly worried that my comping was stale. I felt like I needed to make drastic changes to my voicings, rhythms, dynamics, and articulation in order to keep the music interesting. But in reality, this paranoid thinking pushed me towards internal dialogue rather than outward listening, and it mostly sounded random and unmusical. Often, I could only cognitively manage one variation at a time, so I ended up with a string of disconnected phrasing choices that skewed the message of the comping and separated my playing from the ensemble, even if the words were technically correct. Jim Hall was one of the greatest comping guitarists ever. I mean, how weird did that just sound? The words and the grammar are correct, but every other choice ruins it, and it distracts you from the real meaning and message that I'm trying to convey to you. Now, listen to Jim's comping here. The variations are small but layered. The rhythms are quite repetitive and stable, but he varies slightly with dynamics. He lets these reduced chords pop out more and then ends with a longer, fuller chord voicing. To really be in control of all of these elements and make small, appropriate variations on them is not easy, even though to the listener it sounds simple. The first step is to remove as much cognitive load as possible by removing all decision making. Just play what Jim played. Get closer and closer to the sound and feeling that he's showing you. This requires tons of repetition on a phrase, each time removing cognition and letting the sound guide you until you start to meld into an indistinguishable composite of yourself and Jim Hall. This is the cornerstone lesson of transcription: imitation. Then you can start creating your own variations by playing with other musicians or with the backing track. If your comping is killing, then just keep playing. You're on the way to becoming the comping jazz musician of your dreams. But if the variations aren't hitting the way that you want, it's time to analyze and practice. Maybe your dynamic variations feel random and weak, so isolate that element as your only variable and pick a chord progression from a tune that you know. Limitations like this provide the focus that you need to judge and improve your playing accurately. Too many elements or too long a chord progression creates distracting noise that pulls you away from the real problem area. Start with a chunk of the transcription. As the repetitions continue, flatten out all the dynamics. This is the first stage of control. Now start to experiment with dynamics on different beats. Each time ask yourself if the feeling of each variation is as good as or better than Jim's. As you progress, you can start to add other elements and variations until this world opens up. The truth that you'll come to know is that the compounding effect of multiple small nudges is often better than large swooping changes. More importantly, all of these variations are judged on feeling, and feeling is what allows you to execute off instinct and in the moment. Now I could go on for hours about what makes Jim's comping on this tune amazing, and that could compound into hours more of lesson time. But the focus for this lesson is solid. 1. Rhythm is fundamental. It's the bedrock element of the music, regardless of genre. 2. Less is more. Don't force your comping agenda onto the soloist. 3. Variation is closer than you think. Multiple small nudges are enough. And as a practicing musician, the takeaways should be clear. Learn the language through imitation. Build your understanding of music through 3 concurrent lenses: brain, ear, and touch. And practice variations with feeling as the judge. If there's anything you think I've left out, you can let me know in the comments.